Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are opening a file that, honestly, it feels less like a standard political biography and more like a rejected screenplay.
Oh, absolutely. If you pitched this story to a studio, they'd probably send you away saying the main character's arc is just too unbelievable.
It's just too much. I mean, the story is so packed with contradictions, these subtle reversals, these huge cinematic moments.
It's a narrative that just seems to defy the normal laws of political gravity. Usually a public figure gets one act, maybe two if they're lucky. This man has lived about 5 completely distinct lives.
We're talking about someone who was, and this is an official description, once called the sexiest man alive by the British media, a guy who was a fixture of London's high society nightclubs.
And then becomes a global sporting icon, a titan of cricket, captains his country to its greatest ever victory.
Then transforms into a philanthropist, then a conservative politician promising an Islamic welfare state, and is now sitting in a tiny cell in Adiala jail, known simply as Prisoner No. 804.
And that, right there, is the central paradox we are going to try and unpack today. We are talking, of course, about Imran Khan.
Former Prime Minister of Pakistan, cricket legend, and right now, probably the most famous prisoner in all of South Asia.
This is a massive topic.
It is. We have a huge stack of source material here, a comprehensive biography, we've got cricket almanacs, political analyses, and the legal briefs on the more than 180 cases filed against him.
It's a mountain of information.
And our mission today is really to try and connect these dots. We want to understand how you go from, say, dating socialites in Chelsea to leading a populist movement in rural Punjab.
And maybe the more important question, how does the man who was arguably the military establishment's chosen one in 2018 become their most vocal, their most existential threat just a few years later?
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning, the Lion of Lahore. Because when you look at the early sources, the young Imran Khan, he bears almost zero resemblance to the pious politician we see on the news today clutching prayer beads.
It is a stark contrast. I mean, he was born in 1952 in Lahore to a very affluent Pashtun family. And when we say affluent, you have to understand, we mean the absolute upper crust.
This isn't just comfortable. This is elite.
Totally. He went to Ascent College, which is basically the Eden of Pakistan. It's where the old feudal elite send their sons.
And from there, he follows that classic colonial elite path straight to England, Royal Grammar School, Worcester, and then, of course, Oxford.
Keble College, specifically. And he studied PPE, philosophy, politics, and economics.
The Prime Minister factory degree.
Exactly. It's the degree half the British prime ministers have.
Yeah.
But if you read the accounts from his time at Oxford, and especially in London in the 70s, he wasn't exactly spending his nights in the library debating Keynesian economics.
No, this is the Playboy era. The British tabloids were completely obsessed with him. He was a fixture at Tramp.
That legendary private nightclub on Jermyn Street.
Right. He was rubbing shoulders with Mick Jagger. He was the center of attention.
He was this exotic star. He was handsome. He was a world-class athlete. And he was dating very high-profile women socialites. Artists like Emma Sargent, heiresses like Sita White. There were even rumors linking him to Goldie Hawn.
He was the it boy of London. But here's the interesting nuance in the sources, and it's a detail that comes up again and again. Despite being in the absolute center of this hedonistic swirl, he claims he never drank alcohol.
And people who knew him back then, they corroborate that. It's fascinating. He had this peculiar ability to be in the scene, but not entirely of it. He was always sort of observing.
He definitely enjoyed the attention. I mean, he was voted sexiest man alive by a newspaper.
Oh, for sure. But he maintained a certain Pashtun conservatism when it came to substances. His focus was always on his physical prime. He was an athlete first.
Speaking of which, there's a funny anecdote in the notes about Bollywood.
Oh, this is a classic. Devanand, who is a true titan of Indian cinema, he actually approached Imran Khan to star in a movie, offered him the lead role.
Can you even imagine that? Imran Khan doing a Bollywood song and dance number?
It's impossible to picture. But Khan just turned him down flat. He reportedly told Anand, "I cannot act."
Which, depending on who you ask in Pakistan today, might be the only time he's ever admitted to a lack of talent.
Well, exactly. But it shows his focus was singular. He didn't want to be a movie star. He wanted to be the best cricketer on the planet.
And we really have to talk about the cricket, because for people outside the Commonwealth, I think it's hard to grasp just how good he was. He wasn't just a good player.
No, he is in the pantheon. He's on the Mount Rushmore of cricket. The stats are just undeniable. In Test cricket, which is the longest form of the game, he scored 3,807 runs and took 362 wickets.
So he was elite at both batting and bowling.
One of the very few in history to achieve what they call the all-rounders triple. That's 3,000 runs and 300 wickets. It's an incredibly exclusive club.
But stats can be dry. It was the leadership, wasn't it? The presence.
It was all psychology. You have to remember, in the 80s, the West Indies cricket team was the dominant force. They were terrifying. I mean, they had these huge, fast bowlers who would physically intimidate teams into submission.
And what was Pakistan's team like before him?
Often brilliant, but mercurial, undisciplined.
Mm-hmm.
Khan took that raw talent and he forged it into a unit that could look the West Indies in the eye and not blink. He gave them steel.
There's a note here about neutral umpiring. I didn't realize that was his innovation.
This is a crucial detail because I think it foreshadows his later political obsession with justice and fairness. So back then, home umpires would officiate matches.
And they'd probably be a bit biased.
A bit. There was always a suspicion, often totally justified, that they favored their own team. It created a lot of bitterness and controversy.
So what did Khan do?
In a series against the mighty West Indies, played in Pakistan, he wanted to prove his team could win without any help. So he invited Indian umpires to officiate.
Indian umpires in Pakistan.
Given the political tensions between the two countries, that was a massive, massive gesture of confidence. He was basically saying, we are so good, we don't need the refs on our side. That experiment was so successful, it eventually led the International Cricket Council to adopt neutral umpires as the global standard. He literally changed how the sport was governed.
But the peak, the moment that is just etched into the Pakistani national psyche, is 1992, the World Cup.
It's the cinematic climax of his first life. He was 39 years old. He'd already retired and come back. He had a bad shoulder. In cricketing terms, he was an old man in a young man's game.
And the team started the tournament horribly.
Oh, they were a disaster. They were practically on the plane home. They lost 3 of their first 5 matches.
They were saved by a rainout in one match, right? That got them a single point.
Yes, a moment of divine intervention, as the commentators called it. But they were at rock bottom. And this is where the legend of the Cornered Tigers was born.
The famous speech.
He gets the team together in the locker room. He's wearing a T-shirt with a tiger on it, and he doesn't talk about batting technique or bowling lines. He talks about mindset. He tells them to play like cornered tigers.
What did he mean by that?
He said, there is nothing more dangerous than a tiger that has no way out because it attacks with total freedom. He told them to forget the fear of losing and just fight. Unleash themselves.
And it worked.
It was like a switch flipped. It triggered this miraculous turnaround. They just started winning. They scraped into the semifinals. They beat New Zealand. Then they faced England in the final at the massive Melbourne Cricket Ground.
And he took the final wicket himself.
He did. The winning moment. That image of him, 39 years old, lifting that crystal trophy. That was the moment he went from being just a celebrity athlete to a kind of national savior.
He delivered glory.
And that gave him a reservoir of public trust that no politician in Pakistan could even dream of. And that trust, that became the currency for his next great transformation. Because shortly after that triumph, tragedy struck his personal life.
His mother, Shaukat Khanum.
Yes, she was diagnosed with cancer. And during her treatment, Khan came face to face with the grim reality of healthcare in Pakistan. He realized that if you were poor, a cancer diagnosis was basically a death sentence. The facilities just weren't there.
So he decides to build a hospital. But not just any hospital, a world-class cancer center that treats the poor for free.
And all the experts told me he was crazy. They said it's completely unsustainable. You can't run a free state-of-the-art cancer hospital in a developing economy without massive state support.
But he didn't listen.
He applied that same stubborn cornered tiger mentality. He got in a van and he toured the country.
This is the real grassroots phase of his public life, isn't it?
Absolutely. He went to tiny villages, he went to schools, he went to factories. School children gave him their lunch money. Laborers gave him a day's wages. He raised millions upon millions of dollars, essentially just through the force of his own reputation.
He was a brand people trusted.
And when the Shaukat Khanum Memorial Cancer Hospital opened in 1994, it wasn't just a medical facility. It was proof that he could execute a grand vision, and more importantly, that he was incorruptible. He had handled all that money and delivered.
So, okay, he has the fame from cricket, he has the deep public trust from the hospital, he has a proven track record of management. It seems like the next logical step is politics. But looking at the wilderness years in our outline, It was anything but a smooth transition.
It was a complete disaster, politically speaking. He founded the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the PTI, in 1996. The name means Movement for Justice, but for well over a decade, it was a party of one.
The critics were absolutely brutal. I saw the nickname they gave him in the Western press, In the Dim.
Yes, that was the line, mocking his political intellect, suggesting he was just this handsome, naive sportsman who was out of his depth.
But locally in Pakistan, he earned a much more controversial nickname, Taliban Khan.
Right, and we need to unpack that because it's a very heavy label.
It is. So where did that come from?
It really stems from the post-9/11 era. Pakistan, under General Musharraf, became a key ally in the U.S. war on terror.
Yeah.
But Khan was vehemently, publicly opposed to the U.S. drone strikes in Pakistan's tribal areas along the Afghan border.
He argued they were counterproductive.
He argued that for every one terrorist you kill with a drone, you create 10 more because of the collateral damage, the innocent civilians who get killed. He said Pakistan was fighting America's war, not its own war. He even led a protest march to South Waziristan.
And his critics saw that as...
They saw it as being an apologist for the Taliban. The liberal intelligentsia in Pakistan especially thought he was soft on extremism, that he was romanticizing the Pashtun tribal code and ignoring the brutality of the militants.
But electorally, nobody was buying what he was selling anyway.
Not at all. It was a joke. In the 1997 general election, his party, the PTI, lost every single seat they contested. Every one. In 2002, he was the only member of his party to get elected to the National Assembly. One man. He spent years as this lonely backbencher just railing against the system, completely dismissed by the big political dynasties, the Sharifs and the Bhuttos. They thought he was an irrelevant nuisance.
So what changed? How on earth do you go from being a one-man political joke to the prime minister?
The turning point, the moment everyone points to, is October 30, 2011. The rally at Minar-e Pakistan in Lahore.
The tsunami.
That's what he branded it. And honestly, all the political pundits expected it to be a flop. Another small gathering of his diehard fans. Instead, over 100,000 people showed up. It was a sea of green and red flags. It stunned everyone.
And who were these people? Because they clearly weren't the traditional voters for the big parties.
That's the key. He had tapped into a brand new constituency, the urban middle class and the youth. A generation that had grown up idolizing him as a cricketer, who were educated, connected on social media, and were just sick and tired of the endless corruption of the two-party system.
He offered a third option.
He promised Naya Pakistan, a new Pakistan, free from corruption. And the momentum just started to build.
Then you have the 2013 election where he becomes a serious Gurren for the first time.
Right. And you have that incredibly dramatic moment just days before the election where he falls off a forklift at a rally.
I remember seeing that. It was a terrifying fall.
She fractured his vertebrae. He could have been killed, but he gave this powerful speech from his hospital bed, lying there in a neck brace. The imagery was incredible. He ended up losing that national election to Nawaz Sharif, but his party won control of the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. They finally had a real foothold.
But he didn't just accept that loss gracefully. He immediately started crying foul.
Oh, yeah. He alleged massive systematic rigging. He spent the next 4 years in the streets, basically, leading sit-ins, locking down the capital city, demanding investigations. He was absolutely relentless. He kept the pressure on constantly.
Which brings us to 2018, the year it finally happens for him. But reading the analysis, this victory, it wasn't exactly seen as clean, was it?
The 2018 election is probably one of the most controversial in Pakistan's recent history. On the one hand, Khan made history. He personally won 5 different constituencies, which is a record. But the opposition alleged that the military establishment, the deep state, if you will, had decided it was finally Imran's turn.
This is where that selected versus elected debate comes from.
Exactly. The opposition parties claimed the military had paved the way for him. They alleged a campaign of pre-poll rigging, cracking down on Nawaz Sharif's party, censoring the media, and orchestrating judicial cases against all of Khan's main rivals.
What did the official observers say?
Well, the Election Commission of Pakistan rejected the rigging claims, and EU observers called the election satisfactory overall, but that stain, that perception, it remained. His critics refused to call him the elected prime minister. To them, he was always selected.
So he finally gets the top job. He's in the prime minister's house. He's promised an Islamic welfare state. He's promised to end corruption in 90 days. But as soon as he sits in that chair, reality hits.
And the economic reality was absolutely brutal. He inherited a balance of payments crisis. The country was bleeding foreign reserves and was on the verge of default.
Now, Khan had campaigned on a platform of national sovereignty. He famously said he would rather commit suicide than go to the IMF and beg for a bailout.
That is a really tough soundbite to have floating around when you desperately need money from the IMF.
That's a trap of his own making, really.
It was. And so he hesitated. He spent months trying to get loans from friendly countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and China to avoid going to the IMF. But that delay, it just created massive uncertainty in the markets. The currency plummeted. Inflation just soared.
The buffaloes didn't help, I take it.
Ah, the buffaloes, yes. In a symbolic gesture of austerity, he auctioned off the dairy buffaloes and the fleet of luxury cars for the prime minister's house.
Which his base must have loved.
They loved it. It was great symbolism. But the problem is you can't fix a multi-billion-dollar deficit by selling a few cars and some livestock. Eventually, humiliated, he had to go to the IMF anyway.
So he got all the political pain of the austerity measures without any of the credit for having avoided the bailout in the first place.
Precisely. And for the average Pakistani, life became very, very expensive. Prominent economists like Atif Mian pointed out that during his entire tenure, there was essentially zero increase in average income. People were getting poorer.
But it wasn't all bad news on the domestic front. The sources do mention some significant successes in social welfare.
Yes, and this is where his vision of an Islamic welfare state actually had some real teeth. He launched the ASAAS program, which was a massive social safety net, using data to identify and distribute cash to the poorest families in the country.
And the health card program.
The Sihat Sahulat program. This was genuinely revolutionary for the poor in the provinces where it was rolled out. It was essentially universal health insurance.
So what did that mean in practice?
It meant a poor laborer who could never afford it could walk into a high-end private hospital and get life-saving heart surgery, and the state would pay for it. That bought him a huge amount of loyalty and goodwill among the working classes.
And then in the middle of all this, the entire world stopped. COVID-19 hits.
This was probably Khan's single biggest gamble as prime minister. The entire world was locking down. The pressure on him, both internationally and domestically, to shut down Pakistan completely was immense. But he refused. He refused a total lockdown.
What was his logic there? That seems like a huge risk.
He said, in Pakistan, we have a different problem. If we shut down the cities, the wealthy in their big houses will survive. But the poor, the daily wage earners, they will die of hunger. He made the calculation that starvation was a more immediate and deadly threat than the virus for millions of his people.
That is a terrifying calculation for a leader to have to make.
It is. So instead, he opted for what he called smart lockdowns. They used the military's intelligence software technology that was actually designed to track terrorists, to track virus hotspots. Yes. They would identify an outbreak and then seal off just a specific street or a neighborhood, test everyone, and leave the rest of the city and the economy open.
And what was the result of this strategy?
Surprisingly and controversially effective. Pakistan's death rates were significantly lower than its neighbor India and many Western nations. Now, whether that was down to his policy, the country's young demographics, or just plain luck is still debated, but politically, it was seen as a major win for him. He was vindicated.
Now let's pivot to foreign policy, because this is where things start to get really, really spicy. This is where he starts poking some very powerful bears.
Khan's entire foreign policy vision was to shift Pakistan away from being a U.S. client state, a hired gun as he called it, to being a more neutral, independent player.
He got into those Twitter fights with Donald Trump.
He did. But the real friction, the big break, came after the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021.
The famous absolutely not moment.
That's the one. The Biden administration was looking for bases in the region for over-the-horizon counterterrorism operations. In an interview with HBO, he was asked directly if he would allow the CIA to use bases in Pakistan for that purpose. And his answer was a flat, unambiguous, absolutely not.
That must have rung some serious alarm bells in Washington, D.C.
It certainly chilled relations, but the timing of his next big foreign policy move was, you could argue, even worse. He decided to pivot towards Russia to diversify Pakistan's options and secure cheaper energy.
The Moscow trip.
You couldn't write a script with worse timing. Imran Khan landed in Moscow for a summit with Vladimir Putin on February 24, 2022.
That's the day the full-scale invasion of Ukraine began?
The exact day. He was caught on a hot mic as he was being greeted, saying something like, "What a time I have come. So much excitement."
Oof, that's a bad look.
A terrible look. He argued he was there for his people, to get cheap wheat and gas. At the UN, he refused to condemn Russia, citing Pakistan's neutrality. But in Western capitals, this looked like he was clearly picking a side, and it wasn't their side.
So he's alienating the United States. But at home, he's making an even more dangerous enemy. The very institution that allegedly helped him get into power in the first place. The military.
In Pakistani politics, the golden rule, the one rule you never break, is this. You cannot survive without the army's support. For the first 3 years of his government, Khan and the army chief at the time, General Bajwa, were famously said to be on the same page.
So what happened? What tore the page?
In a word, appointments.
Oh.
In late 2021, the army chief wanted to rotate the head of the powerful spy agency, the ISI. Khan wanted to keep the incumbent, General Faiz Hamid, who was seen as being personally loyal to Khan himself.
So Khan tried to overrule the army chief on a key military appointment. That sounds like a bad idea.
He delayed the official notification. He made it a public standoff. In the rigidly hierarchical world of the Pakistani military, that is seen as a direct challenge to the authority of the chief and the institution. It shattered the trust. The military leadership decided to withdraw its support and become officially neutral.
And in Pakistan, when the army becomes neutral, that's usually the kiss of death for the government.
The opposition coalition smelled blood in the water. They immediately brought a vote of no confidence against him in Parliament in April 2022. Khan tried everything to stop it. He even tried to dissolve the assembly, a move the Supreme Court later ruled was unconstitutional. Finally, late at night on April 10th, the vote went through.
And just like that, he became the first prime minister in Pakistan's entire history to be ousted by a vote of no confidence. But he didn't go quietly into the night, did he?
No, that's not his style. Usually ousted PMs, they go into exile or they just sulk for a while. Khan went straight to the streets.
Yeah.
And he brought a prop with him to his first rally, a piece of paper.
The now infamous cipher.
This is where the story turns into a full-blown spy thriller. Khan stood on stage in front of hundreds of thousands of people, waved this document in the air, and he claimed it was a secret diplomatic cable, a cipher from the Pakistani ambassador in Washington.
And what did he say was in it?
He claimed it was proof that the United States had conspired to have him removed from power. He even named a specific official, Donald Liu, from the U.S. State Department.
What was the specific allegation?
Khan alleged that Liu had told the Pakistani ambassador that if Khan remained in power, Pakistan would face isolation and consequences, but if he was removed, all would be forgiven.
Wow. And was any of that true?
Well, a leaked version of the cipher did eventually surface in the media, and is more nuanced, of course. It did confirm that U.S. officials were very unhappy with Khan's trip to Russia and his neutral stance on Ukraine. It implied relations would be very difficult if he stayed. But the U.S. has always vehemently denied that it orchestrated the no-confidence vote itself.
But for Khan supporters, that nuance probably didn't matter much.
Not at all. The narrative was simple and it was perfect. I stood up for Pakistan's sovereignty against a global superpower, and they conspired with our corrupt local politicians to take me out. It was explosive. It completely galvanized his support base. He was drawing massive crowds all over the country, demanding immediate new elections.
The political temperature was rising very, very fast. And then, November 2022, the city of Wazirabad.
The Long March. Khan was leading this huge convoy of supporters toward the capital, Islamabad. He was standing on top of a shipping container that had been converted into a makeshift stage, waving to the crowds. And then a gunman in the crowd opened fire with an automatic pistol.
And he was hit.
He was hit. He took several bullets to his leg. A supporter standing near him was killed. It was absolute chaos. Khan was rushed away to his cancer hospital for treatment. But even as he was being wheeled into surgery, he did something that crossed the ultimate red line in Pakistani politics.
He pointed the finger publicly.
He didn't just blame some lone wolf attacker. He recorded a video message and publicly accused 3 specific people of plotting his assassination: the current Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, the Interior Minister, and a serving Major General in the ISI, a man named Faisal Nazir.
Accusing a serving intelligence general of trying to kill you.
It was a declaration of total war against the state establishment. The military furiously denied the allegation, but Khan just kept repeating it day after day. He completely broke the fear barrier. Suddenly, ordinary people started criticizing the army openly on social media in a way that had never, ever happened before.
And the establishment, I assume, fought back. We enter the phase you've labeled the legal onslaught.
It was a blizzard. A relentless storm of litigation. Over 180 cases filed against him. Everything from terrorism and blasphemy to treason and corruption.
Let's break down the big ones that actually landed him in jail. First, the Tosha Khanna case.
So Tosha Khanna means treasure house. It's the state repository where gifts given to heads of state are kept. The accusation was that Khan had kept or sold a number of these gifts, including a very expensive Graf watch given by the Saudi crown prince, and had not properly declared the proceeds in his tax filings.
And he was convicted on that.
Yes, convicted and sentenced to 14 years in prison. It was framed as a clear-cut case of corruption, though his supporters argue it was really just a technicality regarding asset declaration that was weaponized against him.
Okay, then the cipher case. They went after him for waving that paper.
Exactly. For making the contents of that diplomatic cable public. He was tried under the Official Secrets Act and sentenced to 10 years for leaking state secrets. Now, that conviction was later overturned by a high court, but it served its purpose of keeping him locked up during a critical period.
But the one case that seemed to shock even his critics was the Edat case.
This was the most personal and, to many, the most bizarre. The court sentenced both Khan and his wife, Bushra Bibi, to 7 years in prison because it ruled that their marriage was un-Islamic and therefore illegal.
How can a marriage be illegal in that context?
It all revolved around a religious concept called Edat, which is a mandatory waiting period in Islam that a woman must observe after a divorce or the death of her husband before she can remarry. The accusation, brought by Bushra Bibi's ex-husband, was that they got married before her waiting period was officially over.
To drag something so private, so religious, into a criminal court.
It was widely seen, even by people who dislike Khan, as a form of moral lawfare, a vindictive attempt to humiliate him and his wife. But like many of the other moves against him, it arguably backfired. It made him look even more like a victim of a personal vendetta.
And amidst all this legal drama, we have the explosion of May 9th, 2023. This feels like the moment of no return.
May 9th was the absolute breaking point. Khan had gone to the Islamabad High Court for a bail hearing in one of his cases. Paramilitary rangers smashed a window of the courthouse, dragged him out, and threw him into an armored vehicle. It was a very violent, very public arrest.
And the country burned.
His supporters didn't just protest. They rioted. And for the first time, they directly targeted the military. They stormed the Corps commander's house in Lahore, a historic building called Jinnah House, and they looted it and set it on fire. They attacked the gates of the general headquarters, the GHQ, in Rawalpindi.
This was the public attacking the holies of the state.
It was a mutiny, and the state's reaction was absolutely ruthless. They launched a massive crackdown. They used facial recognition technology to round up thousands of supporters. They arrested the entire senior leadership of Khan's party. They put them in jail and basically told them, you do not get out until you hold a press conference, denounce May 9th, and quit the party.
A systematic dismantling of his political machine.
Totally. They stripped the party of its election symbol, the iconic cricket bat. They banned Khan's name and his image from being mentioned on television. They essentially tried to erase him from public life.
And yet, we get to the general election of February 2024. And this is the plot twist that absolutely no one saw coming.
The AI election? It was incredible. So Khan is in jail. His party is shattered. Its leaders are in hiding or have quit. His candidates are barred from using the party name, and they're forced to run as independents with random confusing symbols like brinjals and tongs and kettles.
So how on earth did they campaign?
Through technology. Khan would pass handwritten notes to his lawyers from his jail cell. The party's social media team would take those notes, feed them into an AI voice generator that had been trained on Khan's speech patterns, and they would create these AI-generated audio speeches.
That is some real cyberpunk-level politics. The leader is in a dungeon, but his AI avatar is out there rallying the masses on the internet.
And they blasted these speeches out on YouTube, on TikTok, through virtual rallies. And it worked. The establishment thought the game was over. They thought they had crushed him. But on election night, as the results slowly started to trickle in, the shock was palpable. The independent candidates backed by Imran Khan, they were winning.
They were beating the big established parties.
They won the most seats of any single group in the country. It was a massive, stunning shock to the system. It proved that despite the year-long crackdown, despite the incarceration, despite the media blackout, his popularity was not only intact, it was arguably stronger than ever.
But they didn't end up forming the government.
No. The math of a parliamentary system didn't work out. Because they were all officially independent, they were vulnerable to being picked off. The other two big parties, the PMLN of the Sharifs and the PPP of the Bhuttos, who had been bitter rivals for decades, they quickly formed a coalition government specifically to keep Khan's supporters out of power. But the moral victory was undeniable.
So that brings us to today. Imran Khan, Prisoner no. 804. He's being held in a small cell. The government releases photos saying he has an air cooler and an exercise bike. He sends messages out through his lawyers that he's being held in a death cell in solitary confinement. But either way, he is still the undeniable center of gravity of Pakistani politics.
It is a complete stalemate. The government can't release him because they're terrified he would sweep any new election.
Yeah.
But they can't seem to keep him there forever because the constant political instability is just wrecking an already fragile economy.
It really makes you wonder what the end game here could possibly be.
It does. And that brings me to the provocative thought I want to leave you with. In the game of Pakistani politics, the one ironclad rule has always been, the road to power always passes through army headquarters. Khan took that road to get into power, but now he's trying to dynamite that road and build a new one directly through the people.
Right.
You see that he's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize again for 2025. He even tried to run for the post of Chancellor of Oxford University from his jail cell. He's constantly finding ways to keep himself relevant on the global stage.
So the question is,
has Imran Khan actually changed the fundamental rules of the game by mobilizing the public against the very establishment that once sponsored him? Or is he just another powerful player in this brutal cycle who challenged the system and will eventually be discarded by it?
is he a Nelson Mandela figure for his supporters, just waiting for his long walk to freedom? Or is this a classic Greek tragedy, where the hero's own hubris leads to his permanent, inevitable fall?
That is the billion-dollar question. And for now, the answer is locked inside cell num 804 in Adiala Jail.
A truly incredible story of ambition, resilience, and the brutal reality of power. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life of Imran Khan.
Thank you.
We'll catch you on the next one.